Okay, so today we're going to dissect two simple, moral stories that actually tell us some pretty deep truths about how families work. We're talking responsibility, negotiation, the whole shebang. Let's dive in.
This one line, wow, this is the spark that just sets everything off in two totally different households. It's a conflict that feels so ordinary, so mundane, but it's also incredibly profound. I mean, it's a scene that probably plays out in homes all over the world, but with its own unique flavor here.
And this is the question, isn't it? The one at the absolute heart of these stories. Who is going to cook dinner? It sounds so simple, but it's not really about the food. It's about duty, it's about respect, and yeah, it's even about power. And when nobody wants to step up, well, the kitchen stops being a place for nourishment and turns into something else entirely.
Yep, a battleground. That's exactly what it becomes. For these families, dinner time isn't about connecting, it's about conflict. It's about making excuses. And it's about this tension that just keeps building and building. And to really get why, we need to understand a key relationship that's at the center of all this.
Okay, so for anyone who might not be familiar, the Saas-Bahu dynamic, that's the relationship between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law. It's a massive theme in South Asian family life and in their stories. It's a relationship that is just loaded with tradition and expectations, and in these two tales, it's where it all goes sideways.
All right, so let's meet our two families. On the surface, you couldn't find two more different situations. But deep down, they're dealing with the exact same problem. Total chaos in the kitchen, all because of a major clash of personalities. And this just lays it out so clearly. We're looking at two opposite and pretty toxic extremes. In one corner, you've got Ria and Archana. For them, cooking is a punishment, something to be avoided so they can watch TV. And in the other corner, you have a mother-in-law who is so incredibly cheap that it actually becomes a form of cruelty. We're talking about feeding her new daughter-in-law stale food from the wedding just to avoid waste.
And the lengths these daughters-in-law go to are kind of impressive, actually. This isn't just, oh, I'm tired from work. No, we're talking elaborate schemes. One of them actually wraps up her finger with a bandage and red coloring to fake a whole injury, all to get out of making dinner.
Now, over in the other house, the miserliness is just as extreme. Just picture it. You're the new bride, it's your first time in this home, and instead of a nice, welcoming cup of tea, you're given a cup of plain hot water. And the reason? The mother-in-law claims tea causes cancer. It is so clearly a ridiculous excuse just to save a few pennies. So with these battles happening every single night, both families try to find what they think is an easy way out. They decide, hey, let's just outsource this whole mess. But as we're about to see, just throwing money at a deep-seated family problem, well, that rarely ever works.
10,000 rupees a month. That's what the first family agrees to pay a cook to solve their dinner drama. That's a serious chunk of change, and they're hoping it'll buy them some peace. Instead, it just buys them a whole new set of problems.
I mean, look at this. The solution was a complete disaster from day one. The cook shows up 2 hours late, immediately asks for half the money up front, and then only bothers to work for about 15 days of the month. The real issue, the whole responsibility thing, it wasn't solved. They just paid a lot of money to ignore it for a couple of weeks. Meanwhile, in the other house, the situation is getting worse. It's moving from just being neglectful to being actually harmful. Mala, the daughter-in-law, is so weak from the awful food that she literally faints. Her husband asks for some lemon water, and her mother-in-law brings her a glass with no sugar and no salt, because, that would cost money. And that is the absolute breaking point for Mala. She realizes just sitting there and taking it is not an option anymore. And right here, this is where everything pivots in both stories. Arguing has failed, the easy fixes have failed, so what's the solution? Well, it turns out it's not about winning the fight. It's about completely changing the game with a really clever, really unexpected move. So in the first house, the husbands, Sandeep and Rahul, do something truly radical. They announce, fine, we'll leave work early every day and we'll cook dinner. By taking on the so-called woman's work themselves, they shame their wives in a way that yelling never could. It's this public act that finally forces everybody to face the truth. At the same time, Mala comes up with her own absolutely brilliant strategy. She decides to fight fire with fire, or in this case, fight cheapness with cheapness.
She's going to use her mother-in-law's greatest weakness as a weapon against her.
So get this. Mala proposes they hold a big religious ceremony at the house, something her very traditional mother-in-law can't refuse. But then she lays out her cost savings ideas. They'll just ask the guests to bring all the offerings. They'll use banana leaves for plates to save on soap. And the masterstroke? She suggests they just find a fake-looking priest on the street to save on the donation. She's not just threatening the family's money, she's threatening their social status, their reputation, the one thing her miserly mother-in-law cares about more than anything.
And these clever tactics actually work. They succeed where all the anger and arguments failed, and they force a real breakthrough. All of a sudden, that kitchen battleground starts to feel like the heart of the home again.
When the two lazy daughters-in-law see their husbands, fresh from the office, standing there chopping vegetables, it finally hits them. They are completely humbled. They admit they were wrong and willingly take back the one responsibility they had fought so hard to avoid. The shame worked.
And when faced with the nightmare of total social humiliation from Mala's no-cost ceremony, the mother-in-law just breaks. She throws in the towel completely. She finally gets the message. To save her reputation, she has to give up her extreme penny pinching and, this is huge, she hands over control of the kitchen to Mala.
So what's the big takeaway from these two fables? Well, the lessons are pretty clear, right? Being extreme in any way, whether it's extreme laziness or extreme cheapness, is always going to lead to conflict. But maybe the more important lesson here is that sometimes the best way to solve a problem isn't to face it head-on, but to find a smarter, cleverer way to change the entire game. Ultimately, these stories aren't just about who cooks dinner. They're a really powerful reminder that a home, a family, it runs on mutual respect and everyone doing their part. And it leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it? When we think about the kitchen wars in our own lives, are we just fighting to win, or are we looking for that clever path to peace?